In the annals of human history, few events have left as deep and lasting a scar as the Black Death. The mere mention of this devastating plague still sends shivers down our spines nearly 7 centuries later. Today we're going to journey back to the mid-14th century, when death stalked the streets of medieval Europe in its most terrifying form. The story begins in 1347, when merchant ships from the Black Sea docked at the Sicilian port of Messina. The sailors aboard these vessels carried more than just their usual cargo. They brought with them an invisible passenger that would forever change the course of human history. As these ships arrived, witnesses described crew members covered in mysterious black boils that oozed blood and pus. Many were already dead, others were barely clinging to life. The symptoms of the Black Death were nothing short of horrifying. It typically began with a fever, accompanied by severe chills and body aches. Within days, victims would develop the plague's trademark symptom, large, painful swellings called buboes. These black-purple lumps, often the size of eggs, would appear in the groin, neck, and armpits. The pain was excruciating, and the sight was terrifying. As the disease progressed, victims would experience severe headaches, vomiting, and seizures. The final stages often included the appearance of black spots on the skin, giving the plague its infamous name. What made the Black Death particularly terrifying was its efficiency. Once infected, most victims died within 2 to 7 days. The mortality rate was staggering. Estimates suggest that 60% to 75% of those infected succumbed to the disease. In an age without modern medicine or understanding of disease transmission, it must have seemed like the apocalypse had arrived. The spread of the plague was relentless. From Sicily, it moved like wildfire across Europe, following trade routes and human migration patterns. The disease traveled at about 2 miles per day, inexorably advancing across the continent. By 1348, it had reached France and the Low Countries. By 1349, it was devastating England, Scotland, and Ireland. No corner of Europe was spared. The medieval world was woefully unprepared for such a catastrophe. Medical knowledge was primitive by today's standards, based largely on the ancient theory of humors and religious beliefs. Doctors, wearing their distinctive beak-like masks filled with aromatic herbs, which they believed would protect them from miasma or bad air, were powerless to help. Their treatments, including bloodletting and the lancing of buboes, often hastened death rather than preventing it. Cities became death traps. The cramped, unsanitary conditions of medieval urban life created perfect breeding grounds for both the disease and its primary vectors, rats and fleas. Streets that once bustled with life became eerily silent, save for the haunting call of "Bring out your dead," as cart pushers collected corpses. Mass graves called plague pits were dug outside city walls, where bodies were unceremoniously dumped by the hundreds. The social fabric of medieval society began to unravel. The sheer scale of death disrupted every aspect of life. Fields lay unharvested as peasants died or fled. Trade ground to a halt as cities quarantined themselves. Churches, rather than providing comfort, became sources of infection as people gathered to pray. Some communities completely disappeared, leaving behind ghost towns that would never be repopulated. In their desperation, people sought explanations and scapegoats. Some blamed divine punishment for society's sins. Others pointed fingers at marginalized groups, particularly Jews, who faced horrific persecution as a result. Flagellants, religious zealots who whipped themselves in public, roamed from town to town, believing their extreme penance would appease God's wrath. The plague exposed the darkest aspects of human nature: fear, superstition, and the tendency to find someone to blame. Yet, from this unprecedented catastrophe came profound changes that would reshape European society. The massive population decline led to the breakdown of the feudal system, as surviving peasants could demand better wages and working conditions. The shortage of clergy led to religious texts being translated into local languages, weakening the church's monopoly on spiritual matters. The failure of traditional medicine spurred new approaches to health and hygiene. The Black Death also changed how people viewed life and death. The concept of memento mori, remember that you must die, became deeply embedded in European culture. Art and literature reflected this preoccupation with mortality, as seen in the countless danse macabre, artworks showing death, leading people from all walks of life in a final dance. By the time The first wave of the Black Death subsided around 1353. Europe had lost an estimated 1/3 to 1/2 of its population. The final death toll is believed to be between 75 and 200 million people, the deadliest pandemic in human history relative to total population. The plague would return periodically over the next few centuries, though never with the same devastating impact as the initial outbreak. The legacy of the Black Death extends far beyond its immediate impact. It marked the end of the Middle Ages and the beginning of significant social, economic, and cultural changes that would eventually lead to the Renaissance. It demonstrated humanity's vulnerability to disease while simultaneously showcasing our resilience and ability to adapt and survive. Today, as we face our own global health challenges, the story of the Black Death remains relevant. It reminds us of the importance of scientific understanding, public health measures, and social cooperation in fighting disease. It shows us that even the darkest chapters of human history can lead to positive change and progress. Most importantly, it teaches us that humanity can emerge from devastating crises, changed but ultimately stronger. The Black Death was more than just a pandemic, it was a turning point in human history that fundamentally altered the course of civilization. Its impact continues to resonate through the centuries, a stark reminder of both human fragility and resilience in the face of catastrophic adversity.